We're good.
You're back, bye.
Okay, we're out of executive session and I have 18:33. Next up on the agenda is consent agenda. For approval of consent agenda, minutes from the board meeting of 10/10/23 and the bank statement, check register. I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we can do the consent agenda and, check, register bank statement. I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as submitted. Discussion, questions, comments? This is a real hard format to read, I can tell you that.
It is, yes, but that's the new format from BMO, so I'm giving you the exact right off the bank website.
Kind of like your format better.
If you want me to go back to cash flow, I'm more than happy to go back to cash flow.
One takes a bit.
I see Comcast was 4,653. We pay annually for them, or is that?
No, that's,
Okay,
but that's 2 months.
okay. That's on the internet, everything. Okay.
Hawkins, Delfield, Wood.
That's legal for the one-time line of credit.
Okay.
That was the resolution you guys signed when we did all that.
And, 74,510 Harbor Vance, is that just, yeah, total?
Chancellor.
Okay. And then, sorry, Aiken, I see two from Aiken, both for 6,000 on the same day, on 10/24/23. I checked 7/4/544.
What you'll see is since the check signing wasn't all that, so that's why this one's a lot longer. So you'll see some of those, and then also, when those things were signed, there was 2 cut from 2 separate invoices instead of being put on 1, that's why.
Any further questions?
Does Harbor Vance come monthly or weekly or?
It's a couple times a month.
Okay.
We actually cut it off for, how long did we go? A couple months, so.
Yeah, board services. Any other questions?
No. I thought we were gonna get ask for a profit loss or a budget versus actual on accounts.
So that's part of the thing that we were trying to explain before. The system, we found this in actually Moody's report, we're going to, I think, a little bit as well. When we got this system, if you want me to print you something from that system that has, for as long as we can tell, never been reconciled, I can't guarantee you that. That's why I've been giving you a cash flow. So I can print you something from that, but I am not going to tell you that that is audited or reconciled because I can't. And it hasn't been audited and it hasn't been reconciled as far back as we can see. So that's why I was giving you guys that cash flow. So if I can do that again, that's the most accurate thing. You see money in, money out, and that was why I was giving that to the board every month.
Shouldn't you be able to compare it to your?
And we're building that.
From last, your current budget, right? So that we can see which line items and stuff's coming out of.
We are building that for our use, but we have to build it outside of the system because that stuff isn't reconciled. So you have to get a completely separate report. And that's why you were getting that separate report. So before, that's what I'm trying to explain. You had that cash flow to see where everything was going. When you're comparing it to that and in the because it's financial edge, that you could run that and I could give you that if it was reconciled and stuff, but it is not compared going back because we've been putting everything in there, reconciling it and compare it with our CPAs and stuff and having a forensic auditor go through there. So the most accurate information is what you're getting with bank statements and cash flow, which is what I was giving, but you guys said we want to change that. So hopefully next month.
So the director said we are working towards it.
Yeah.
It's not, it with audits, the audit is the most important thing for him right now. So we are building it, yes, we will, and we want that because we also want it for each division that has a budget, where they're at, how much they've spent, Rick is getting one shop. So we are doing it, but we're gonna have to build it outside of what he currently uses. I'm going to recommend to the board that the cash flow analysis is the most accurate we can for now, but we are building it, we are working towards that. I don't have a date for you, it'll be after the first of the year.
Okay.
We are working on it.
But you have like a ballpark-ish. I know.
So when we approve this RFP, it takes literally all of my time and devotion to get these audits done. And it's not, we don't have one now, we have two, because we have to go back and do everything that happened before from the last audit company. So I would say realistically, February is the first meeting, because hopefully we get two audits and reconciliations, like an actual report from audit companies, which would be better than I give you 1 month of, because you're gonna get an independent review of everything. But the cash flow I can give you every month again, if you guys wanna see it. Before I was told that you didn't wanna see it, so.
Yeah, well, we wanna see what you guys thought you were gonna pay and what we're actually paying. That makes sense.
I can,
No.
At the end of the day, that's what we want.
Correct, we understand that, and we are working towards it, just under it, all we ask is that you understand that with the number of things we have going on, the audit has to be, we are working on, it is part of the stuff that Chief Sanchez is working on. Again, it's only a single individual, we were trying to do as much as we can, but we believe we can, that he's shooting for the meeting in February, that we can start that, and then once we have that established, it'll be from there on out.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Let's do one.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, no, you're good, you're good.
Go ahead.
Anyway, I was just looking at the EMO stuff, even though like, can the computer system highlight deposits versus withdrawals or
this is, well,
all personal withdrawal deposits?
Yeah.
Okay.
and then if you keep going, you'll see where it says withdrawal and eligibility.
Sweet. Okay, that was, like. Got it. Okay,
You good?
yeah,
Okay, I have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the consent agenda. All in favor? Aye.
well,
All opposed? Motion carries. Chief Officer's report.
So along with the report that we're working on for your actual versus, budgeted, right? We're also working on revamping and updating our current report system for you. So call volume, stuff like that. We did potentially look at a couple other options with image trend, that it gives us better reporting for our calls and unit utilization. So we are working on it. So if you have questions, I'm more happy to answer it. Our call volume is staying steady. I'm anticipating somewhere around approximately 7,000 to 7,500 calls. But again, that it ebbs and flows depending on the population and the weather as well.
how's it looking for average compared to our annual?
So average, so
I remember we brought about.
we're actually, we've kind of plateaued out. So we ended the year with 60, off the top of my head. We actually finished the year like 6,400 calls, and with the new complexes and the amount of people that are moving into St. Helens, we're anticipating that's going to be closer to 7,000 before the end of this fiscal year.
Thank you. Anything else under Chief Officer's report? Okay, so before we move on, we do have some changes to the agenda, based on, and this is for speaking for the general public that is out there in Zoom land. We had a couple things we were going to discuss that we thought were executive session, but they're not, so we're going to discuss them here in public. So this one I'm going to put under old business. It'll be a follow-up with Aiken. Would you give us the brief on the Moody report thing that you were going to do in the public session, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
As I reported in executive session, Mr. Moody is traveling. I'm not the person to answer questions. I can just convey what Mr. Moody has relayed to me and read a summary. we can get him here at a subsequent meeting if you like. Mr. Moody, received from the district attorney the working papers of Paulie Rogers, and he has prepared a, exhaustive expert report based on his review of the auditors, that set of auditors' working papers. I will get to that in a minute. As a result of reading that report, I asked Rob Moody some questions. And I'm simply going to read to you excerpts from his email response. I don't really have any problems or concerns with the balances reported in the financial statements. They appear, and this concerns the missing $4.5 million. The financial statements appear to be materially correct. My issue with the audits are with the lack of work performed, the reporting of internal control weaknesses, and communications that should have taken place with the board. The summary is that the district was in a good position financially at the end of 2020-2021 fiscal year. And from that point on, budgeted and spent beyond their ability to generate revenue. Fund balance in the general fund has decreased by nearly $3 million since June 2021 as a result. If spending continues as budgeted for 2023-2024, the district will likely be in a deficit position in the general fund by June 30 of 2024. As reported in the financial statements, the district consistently increased its fund balance in the general fund year over year from $800,000 in 2009-2010 to $4.5 million at the end of 2020-2021. In each of those years, actual revenues collected exceeded budgeted levels, and actual expenditures came in at less than budgeted amounts. During that period, actual revenues collected exceeded actual expenditures in each year except 2011-2012, when expenditures exceeded revenues by $439,000. And here he's recapping based on a combination of the records he otherwise received plus the audit papers from the auditors. Then he goes on. Due to the timing of budget development and the process for adopting the annual budget, the district estimated beginning fund balance each year. It is a common practice to revise those estimates once the audit of the prior year is complete, to update beginning balances to match the actual ending balance from the prior year. And usually that happens before you're adopting the budget in June for the following July. He goes on, the district did not update the initial estimates for beginning fund balances. And bear in mind, many of these, as Chief Sanchez pointed out, many of these audits never got done. The district did not update the initial estimates for beginning fund balance, which were significantly underestimated each year. Beginning fund balance for the general fund was underestimated by amounts ranging from $610,000 in 2009-2010 to as much as $2.5 million in 2017-2018 when compared with the actual amounts. Fund balance in the general fund continued to grow to $4.05 million in 2018-2019 and $4.2 million in 2019-2020, and then $4.5 million at the end of 2021 fiscal year. In short, the district found itself in a strong fiscal position with sufficient fund balances at the end of 2020-2021 fiscal year. But beginning in 2021, 2022 fiscal year, the district budgeting and spending practices appear to have changed. The district budgeted expenditures to exceed revenues by 1.6 million for 2021, 2022. Actual expenditures exceeded actual revenues during the year by more than 1.1 million, according to unaudited draft financial statements prepared by the district. The district ended 2021, 2022 with a fund balance in the general fund of 2.7 million. The district continued to budget expenditures in excess of revenues in 2022, 2023, resulting in an estimated ended fund balance in June 30, 2023 of 1.2 million, a spend down of approximately 1.5 million from the prior year. Chief Sanchez joined the district in July of 2022. And after the 2022-2023 budget was adopted, that's when he started to begin to flag the alarms that the money wasn't there. And it's not clear, this is me, not Moody, it's not clear what the ongoing impact of overstating, when the impact of overstating beginning cash balances from year to year, in fact, began. Moody also told me that during that period of time, the district's financial statements were prepared by the accounting firm at the district's request. That's an interesting circumstance. Because ordinarily financial statements are the responsibility of the client, not the accountant. The accountant is, as auditor, is auditing and certifying the accuracy of the financial statement. It's pretty hard to do independently and objectively if you're preparing the financial statement. That nevertheless does happen occasionally, and there are regulatory hoops that have to be jumped through by an auditor that undertakes to prepare the financial statements for the client to ensure objectivity and independence. Moody, in response to my questions about that, simply said he doesn't know whether that was done. So with that by way of background, Moody writes a cover letter that addresses his review of the independent auditor's working papers from June 2017 through June 2021. During the period of these audits, the district, in his cover letter to his report, the district initially saw its fund balances grow to more than $4.5 million at the end of 2020, 2021. The financial stability of the district helped mask issues that should have been apparent through the independent audit of the district's financial statements and related reports. In fiscal years from 2021 to present, fund balances fell to an estimated 1.2 million at the end of June of 2023 and project a deficit in 2023, 2024. And he concludes in his cover letter, it is clear that the board of directors believes that an independent audit of the district's financial statements should have built awareness and prompted actions that may have helped mitigate the current situation. I am not going to, we can make copies available, to you and, see if
They all actually have
and
copies.
you should have copies of this audit report in front of you. I'm not going to read all of it to you. I am going to read a portion of the executive summary and the conclusion, however. Mr. Moody writes that the government financial statement audits performed in accordance with professional standards established by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. In order to perform a public entity audit, he's not writing this, I'm telling you that in Oregon, to perform audits for municipalities, they're separately licensed by the Board of Accountancy based on a separate set of qualifications to undertake this work. For the fiscal years 2017 through 2021, Polly Rogers was engaged as an independent CPA to audit your financial statements. And then I quote, our review of the auditor's working papers identified several indicators that professional standards were not followed with respect to risk assessment and proper documentation related to the audits performed. He lists 6 of those finding insufficient evidence on page 1, and notes that the reports and communications issued by the auditors presented the board with no cause for concern in that unmodified or clean opinions were issued on the financial statements, indicating they were materially correct and could be relied upon. The auditors did not issue a separate management letter or communicate any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in any internal controls related to their audits. Even though many of the weaknesses cited were repeated year after year with no indicated improvement by the district. Based on the indicators noted above and described in greater detail in the remainder of this report, we have reached the conclusion that the financial statement audits performed by Polly Rogers and Company were not performed in accordance with the professional standards established by the AICPA. In conclusion, after making 14 specific findings which detail the criteria he's applying, the conditions that he found, and the effects that that had, he reaches a conclusion stated this way. Based on a review of the auditor's working papers related to their audits of the district financial statements for the years ending June 2017 through June 2021, we are of the conclusion that the audits performed do not conform to professional standards in the areas relating to planning and risk assessment, to procedures performed, understanding of the client and internal controls, documentation of procedures, and reporting. The auditor's reporting and communications with the board of directors present a message that there was no significant cause for concern regarding the district's processes or internal controls. Weaknesses in the district's controls have manifested in independent investigations and allegations of misconduct and significant reductions in the district's fund balance available to fund operations. Had the auditors communicated significant deficiencies and or material weaknesses in the district's internal controls, the district may have had sufficient notice to timely respond to the issues and take steps to strengthen the controls and practices and potentially mitigate some of the current financial challenges of the district. I can't opine in any significant degree, except to say that the Polly Rogers report seems to dictate a further inquiry concerning liability toward malpractice, malfeasance liability by Polly Rogers, and whether the district is able to recover based on damages and losses associated with the the work that was performed is described in Mr. Moody's report.
That's the forensic audit that we paid for.
I think the short answer to your question is that, some number of grand jury subpoenas got lost or misplaced in a file somewhere at the courthouse, and therefore neither the state police nor Mr. Moody have a bunch of records that should have been received a rather long time ago. I'm sorry? Well, I don't know for sure, but I think you're on the right track. Long story short, Detective Clark's a little bit impatient. They're working through it. And, more will be revealed, but, we know a couple of things. The search warrants and the rest of the information on the forensic audit piece relate to the credit card spending predominantly. The big concern initially was where was the $4.5 million? We figured out that we spent it. And we spent it because the beginning cash balances, I don't know what they were exactly, but, and I'm not prepared to tell you that it was the same beginning cash balance carried over multiple years. Let it suffice to say that budgets over multiple years were built on an erroneous beginning cash balance, and as a result, the district, unbeknownst to the board or whether it was whoever the chiefs were that running it then, we were spending more money than we were taking in, and that's where so the 4 million wasn't stolen. We're looking at the credit card expenditures. That's still a, I don't know, $800,000 or $900,000 issue to figure out what's appropriate and what isn't. And they can't get to the bottom of that without the rest of the search warrant being executed. Costco's apparently is getting served on them tomorrow.
And in January 1st, when we have our next budget and everything like that, we need the actual budget and the proposed budget. Like, what were you guys thinking, or what we were thinking of spending, and what did we spend? Because obviously, yes, I agree, we're going on a downhill trend fast, and we have to know as a board, and as the firefighters and the admin, everybody needs to know what's going on. Otherwise, this is gonna, go up in a ball of flames.
Couldn't agree more, but to the best of my knowledge, we have that information. We've known ever since Moody and.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
We've known since, yes, we do. We've known since Moody and, Kristen gave their audited report and their forecast 2 or 3 months ago. We've known what our available resources are today. And we've known that we were the deficit that you're facing.
You knew back in August.
North of $400,000 in come June. You knew that when Moody and Kristen came to you in August.
Yes.
There's no question about that.
They confirmed what we've been saying since last year of August of 2022.
Okay, what I'm trying to do is in August of 2022, we were going through a forensic audit. We weren't sure where money was, we weren't sure of this, and we weren't sure of that. I couldn't understand the board, the way that the forensic or the finance documents were shown. I'm just saying that I want to see actual, and I want to see budgeted, and I want to see if we go over on a line item, and I want to see if we go under on a line item. And apparently, it doesn't have to be down to the nets, the penny, but we have to see a trend, at least something, sooner than later. running a business here, right?
You had the trend, you had a cash flow, it's giving you down to the penny, and you have that thing, we're putting it all together for you. I told you the biggest expense that's over expenditure right now is everything that's occurred since July first of 2023. That's your difference, I said at the last board meeting, and the totaling of that, so I will give you the receipts and everything, and everything that has to do with legal, getting another one-time payment for the line of credit, multiple investigations that were lost, that's, so everything else, other than that, we haven't been spending a thing outside of EMS, so, and you're going to get it.
I'm not saying things the right way because I'm on a cell phone up in the mountains, but I'm very clear on what we want. So, and the thing that happens sooner than later.
You've got it from 3 different CPAs, so if we have to do it again, we can do it again.
Cool.
We paid over 6 figures in having people say the same thing 3 different ways.
Well, in large, I mean, the point I was making about early on in the executive session about a strategy meeting has a direct bearing, I think, on exactly what you're saying. I mean, at some point, everybody has to accept the bitter, salt-laden,
What better than that to have a budgeted and actionable line item for everything, right? That makes the most sense to me.
well, what you're gonna have to do is take the current budget and figure out how to shave about $500,000 out of it between January 1 and June 30.
We've been saying.
Yep.
When we met with, President Niles and Zimbrook, we discussed this. I don't think you were there for that meeting, but we went into detail over this as well. So, they were there for that meeting, we went into detail about how to shave that down, and we went over that.
Yep.
And just so that I have some clarification and I get some questions answered that I have.
Okay, and so the other piece of this is the board and Chief Smythe directed 2 separate investigations, and Jim Band's here to brief you up on each of those.
Excellent. It's like I'm either a court or giving a lecture. Okay, good evening. We've talked about one of the investigations, the first one that you hired me to do. And so I'm gonna be a little more brief on that one, and I'm gonna kind of talk in big brush strokes, unless you have questions, or if that's not what you want, then tell me, and I'll go as granular as you want. Now, that being said, the end product of this, I've got 2 different documents. I've got a completed report that's about 30 pages that is very detailed. Everyone that I interviewed, I recorded, but then I wrote down a lot of what was said so that anybody reading it could understand what I based my report on by reading without having to go through and list hours of an investigation. Talking with Aiken, and this has been done in other cases, I have also done an executive report, which the end of the 30-page document has this same, I think it's 8 pages of an executive summary on the end of it. The only difference is there's more information. Aiken will give you, will tell you the degree to which you should try and keep that private or not. The main reason we sort of did this was, a lot of people we were talking to were really nervous about what they were saying, and is anybody going to see this? So that's always a consideration, people fearing retaliation, that sort of stuff, especially in the environment that's been going on here at CRFR. So in sort of a nutshell, a big nut,
this investigation initially started, there were 3 employees who put to paper that they feared that they were working in a hostile work environment. And to be frank, it really involved you guys as a new board and different things that had been said in the election running up to the board. Looking at how people felt, people who were talking about being in this hostile work environment, I looked at everything. I looked at social media posts, which there was a ton of, as I'm sure you're aware, as the election was going on. So if I were somebody who worked here and I saw this stuff on social media, and I saw this election and everything going on, that might make me feel like I was working in a hostile environment, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that a policy is violated. Now, state law requires that an elected official in office needs to follow the harassment policies of the organization that they represent. My job's to really kind of call balls and strikes. And so there was a lot of emotional stuff that I think for everybody here would be pretty tough to work around. But at the end of the day, based on these complaints, from the time that you guys as board members took office, is there anything that took place that, so essentially during the time that you were subject to a policy, is there anything that took place after that that was a policy violation? At the end of the day, no. I couldn't find anything where anyone had violated any policy since you guys had been elected to office. My job was to find out, is it a hostile work environment? And if so, whose fault was that? As I started interviewing people, I learned quickly this has been a hostile work environment for, I don't know, everyone for a considerable period of time. There were, for this investigation, I didn't involve any represented employees. It was all management employees. I don't even know how to characterize. I worked around a lot of organizations. I've helped a lot of organizations who are in trouble. I've never seen a management group that is that generally, to some degree, is united in working as one piece, as fractured as this one. I talked to a number of people who, basically everybody, had or still did worry that their jobs could go away at any point in time for a variety of reasons. I had several people I was interviewing while I'm asking them questions about this, either describing to me that it was obvious that they were working in a hostile environment, and had a couple of them say it in the middle of the conversation. Maybe I should be making a complaint about a hostile work environment. If I look at really what sort of happened, I can't, it cannot be understated, the degree, the importance of who is in charge of an organization and the culture that they create for their employees. Your employees need to feel safe at work. They need to feel like they can make a mistake and no one's going to cut their head off. All of that calmness leads to communication and trust, and for an organization to work through labor contracts, disagreements, long hours, tough work, responding to 911 calls, seeing the worst of things, right? And what I heard, what the evidence showed me was that there was a lot that happened to this organization from the minute that Joel Medina came in as a fire chief until he went away. In my report, I wrote a comment that before Joel Medina was fired, there were a lot of people who thought they could get fired at any point. After Joel Medina was fired, there were a number of people who thought they could get fired at any point. All valid feelings. Without belaboring it much beyond that, this report that you read, I've got copies of it here tonight, will sort of fill in the blanks and tell you some of the what I'm talking about. I do want to just read a couple things real quick. One thing, this was a board member, Hudson, and I'm just reading this because this came out before in an investigation. And in this, he was writing about Fire Chief Medina and about things that he did well. But he also said, whoever is his own worst enemy, his communication style is loud and aggressive, which in turn is perceived to be antagonistic and threatening. While not at all his intent, that aggression is what most universally comes across to his subordinates. The lower down the food chain you are, the more intimidating it is. And there's more to that. I read that and I thought, well, that's pretty much everything that I'm hearing from a variety of people. And so if you think about organizationally what's going on, you've got people working directly under a fire chief. They're not on the same page. They're all operating based out of fear. Even the people who are seen as most affiliated with that fire chief were worried about their own jobs. And I won't belabor all of that. You have a union who is also scared. I didn't even talk to anybody, but I know from talking to these chiefs, the things that were, I wouldn't even say trickling down, but pouring down. You've got your managers in the middle who are supposed to be reassuring the troops that everything's going to be okay. And nobody feels safe or confident in their job. I didn't think this investigation would go into a conversation about the fire chief that had been fired. But all I could see was dysfunction. My point in saying that is I think it just became white hot around here. It was like somebody threw a hand grenade in the middle of the community. And that caused this gigantic storm that everybody felt. And certainly the employees who raised issues that they thought it was a hostile work environment, but a bunch of people who never even made a complaint. And was it hostile? Yes, it was hostile, but it wasn't just hostile for them, it was hostile for everybody. And everything I saw in my investigation and everything that I know as a prior police chief for 10 years and work that I've done, the fault of that, what the real core, the root cause of where all this came from was everything that happened in the wake of your former fire chief. And that is based on what everybody told me. I did not talk to Chief Medina, and I addressed that a little bit in the report. The other thing that I was going to say that is important, and this is from your guys' policy, and I'm going to read this. In any case where facts cannot be substantiated nor allegations proven, the behavior of all parties involved, including the overall behavior of all personnel at the work site of the affected parties, will be monitored for a period of time. If similar reports of behavior are submitted, the investigation process will reopen. If no further incidents of behavior are observed or reported during the period of review, the matter will be considered closed. And I wrote, the fears and perspectives of everyone interviewed should be taken seriously, and the policy seems to acknowledge that conditions not necessarily meeting the bar of harassment can still be negative and problematic in the future. The instability at CRFR has led to an atmosphere of overwhelming mistrust, fear, and a number of people interviewed were in the process of finding work elsewhere. The administration board of directors at CRFR should make deliberate efforts to ensure a healthy workplace for everyone. So even though this determination is there, I think the policy sort of calls out that acknowledgement. So does anybody have any questions about that? I've got copies of these that I'm leaving here. I think I have 12 of them, and then Aiken has I've got another report that I'm going to be leaving for you on this vote of no confidence investigation. I've got that, and then Aiken has the peer copies of all of them. Any other questions about that investigation?
Good. That seems pretty clear to me.
Okay. The no confidence vote. I sort of think I'm just going to run down the claims. There's a number of claims in here. I did meet with the union a couple times on this, talked to several people. Some disclaimers that I have written in here. Some of these claims were very broad, big stuff. I could have spent a lot of your money. You know, there are meetings with 10 people. I could have gone and interviewed all 10 people. I could have made this investigation much larger. What I decided to do was basically go to the point where I felt completely comfortable based on a preponderance that I could support a determination with evidence. Not necessarily something that somebody said. I went beyond and I wanted paper in my hand to prove whatever I was, when possible, whatever I was substantiating. So I could have interviewed probably 50, 60 more people. It would have cost you 50, 60,000, you know, who knows? But I feel fully confident in the determinations that were made in here. And I think it's fairly important to go through at least some of them. It is also very interesting doing this after doing the first investigation, because ultimately what I think a lot of this no confidence vote was really about, at its core, it was really about the first no confidence motion that they did, which was against Chief Medina. So the first assertion, or as I wrote, claim in this no confidence motion was about Joel Medina and something he had said. He's not an employee here. I can't interview him. Obviously, there's a lawsuit going on. So I didn't even touch that one. That's for the reasons I just stated. One claim, whereas CRFR single role paramedics incidentally discovered that Jimmy Sanchez incorrectly processed their paychecks using pay scales other than what was stated in the collective bargaining agreement, despite being made aware of the issue over a month prior. There were reasons I think that the union was confused here. The ones they gave me were what they saw as a discrepancy between the hiring letters of some paramedics, which contract are we operating under? Obviously, there's an arbitration, and then they were being paid according to a spreadsheet. So this difference sort of, to them, they didn't understand exactly what had happened. I talked to them. I looked at a bunch of documents, paid documents. I talked to Chief Sanchez, and ultimately what this is about, without boring you to death, most people work 40-hour weeks, right? There's 52 hours in a week. So a standard FLSA work week is work year is 2,080 hours, 173.33 hours in a month. Your single role paramedics, their schedule in the contract is working 4/12s and then having 4 days off. There's inherent overtime in that work schedule. It isn't really clarified in your contract very well. Chief Sanchez saw that. He saw that there was overtime that they were not being paid. He went to Chief Medina at the time and said, hey, here's this problem. How do we fix it? They came up with a fix. Because there was already a contract, Sanchez prepared the spreadsheet that accounted for that money. One of the employees, I think it was over $19,000 in back wages that employee was due. And they arranged that with the employee. It's not a valid claim at all. This is a lack of an understanding about something that happened, but the fact that that an issue was raised against Chief Sanchez had he not discovered this, these people probably still wouldn't know. This demonstrates to me everything that was going on. The lack of communication, the lack of trust, but ultimately this is not valid. It is a good thing that you've got managers who were being diligent, and they weren't just being diligent when it was going to hurt the employee. This was a chief figuring out, hey, the employees are not getting something that they should and correcting it. I did write in here that I think, and I talked to Adam Call, your labor attorney. I don't think the fix in the I don't think he knew that this was going on. I think it should probably get addressed in the contract, which he said they can do in a pretty simple MOU. Number 3, Jimmy Sanchez and Joel Medina arbitrarily removed half of a firefighter/paramedic sick leave and vacation without cause, violating 3215's collective bargaining agreement. Arbitrarily. Jimmy Sanchez and Joel Medina arbitrarily. You know, that's sort of saying that this was just done for no real reason, or I'm the boss, I can do it. I don't. There's a bunch of definitions of arbitrarily. When I met with the union, they weren't exactly sure which employee this was. I went through a bunch of emails, and ultimately, I believe that this was somebody named Ron Cordell. There were other issues that had come up with 2 other employees that were sort of similar. What had happened in this case is you had an employee who the prior year had not worked for 6 months. They'd been on long-term disability. When you're on long-term disability, you're not being paid by the district. So you're an employee and your agreement is, hey, I'll come to work for you. Employer's like, hey, I need that work done. I'll pay you if you do the work. If an employee can't come to work, at some point, they're not going to get paid anymore once they're out of time. The district pays for insurance in case that happens, so the employee's still going to get something if this happens. That's what was going on. There's a lot of rules around long-term disability. One of the conversations when I talked to the union was that this should not have been complicated because the employee was looking at, we get credited everything vacation and holiday for the coming year. So January 1, I get all the vacation that's going to come later in the year. I've never seen that in a contract. Normally you don't get it until you earn it. You get your July 4th on July 5th. Well, the problem with looking at it like that is the prior year, the employee gets all the vacation and holiday for the prior year under the assumption that they're going to work it. And the employee didn't work the last 6 years. So you can't, that cuts both ways. The real point in this is to the term of arbitrary. And this is a theme that I saw here. The healthiest of organizations have this push-pull, this conversation between union and management all the time. And I sort of get the impression, maybe through mistrust or whatever's going on, that anytime that there's a conversation or you have to work through an issue, that the union thinks that somehow something is, that they're getting done wrong somehow. This was not arbitrary. These are complex matters. Long-term disability is a complex matter. So to say that this was arbitrary, there's a bunch of conversation between them and the labor attorney trying to hammer this out. This is normal business. Contract interpretation. This happens all the time. So that one, that is not valid either. Jimmy Sanchez, Joe Medina violated 3215's collective bargaining agreement by arbitrarily withholding half of a former firefighter paramedics earned income following his resignation. Again, arbitrarily. This was not at all arbitrary. You guys have another benefit that I've never seen anywhere. You guys pay out, I think it's up to 60 shifts, 1,440 hours of sick time. I'm not aware of anybody getting that in the state. It's a fantastic benefit. In this case, it was about $70,000 that was due to this employee that was leaving. He was not a union person. This did not violate the contract. It is in the policy though, so it's the outcome should be the same. I think most people, boards, taxpayers would expect that your management is going to dot an I or two and cross a T when you're paying out a benefit of $70-some thousand to an employee. What sort of made this more difficult was it isn't super specific, but it does say that the sick time will be paid out in the last 2 years of somebody's employment. This former employee gave notice that he was retiring in 8 months. So the policy says over the last 2 years, and he says, I'm retiring in 8 months. So that creates sort of an issue of how we're going to pay this person out. Sanchez wasn't even, I saw email traffic between the attorney, Chief Medina, Ms. Lemmer was doing a lot of the work. Sanchez wasn't even on any of the emails. So he really had nothing to do with it, but it wasn't arbitrary. This is due diligence, and ultimately that employee was made whole. Jimmy Sanchez, while fulfilling the role of a battalion chief, incorrectly criticized the firefighter's job performance and knowledge on a potential hazardous materials incident, referring to non-existent standard operating guidelines, and snidely telling the firefighter, I don't want to tell your wife you died. He demonstrated the same behavior. He criticized another hazardous materials incident. So I met with the firefighter in question. I showed him documentation that was a checklist for natural gas incidents and 2 standard operating procedures, J-01 and H-04, which cover natural gas incidents, respirators, and personal protective equipment. I'm a dumb cop, but they appear to require the use of an SCBA at a natural gas incident. I had a conversation with this firefighter, and I said, is it fair to say in a technical sense that Chief Sanchez was correct or is he crazy to say you should wear an SCBA at a natural gas incident? He said to me, quote, "No, I think you should wear one. I really do. We just never have in this organization." And then after the fact, he didn't either. So the firefighter made it sound like supervisors don't really require that here. And so it doesn't sound like it's standard practice, but he said that, yeah, we probably should be doing that. As to Chief Sanchez doing this at a follow-up incident, I talked to Chief Sanchez. He said he responded to a later incident and involving natural gas. The firefighters were already inside the house with the family was back in the house as well. So at this point, he's like, what am I gonna go in with this for the family's even back in? Whereas during a healthcare committee meeting, Jimmy Sanchez inexplicably ordered Kyle Melton, a firefighter in attendance, not to ask questions about healthcare coverage for which the meeting was about, threatened discipline if he did not. I watched the video. I talked to the union about this. I talked to Chief Smythe, or excuse me, Chief Sanchez about this. Let's just say that. Oh, I'm sorry. I talked to Chief Sanchez about this, not Chief Smythe. So this, I also reviewed emails about this healthcare meeting. Aaron Schrotzberger, the union president, had emailed Chief Medina on June 1st, 2023, requesting this meeting to be scheduled. And it was because of the contract, which he included in his email, stating the insurance committee needed to review the renewal proposal each year and mutually agree to the plan design changes. There's more verbiage there. So that was the purpose of this meeting. In that email exchange, Chief Medina requested, and the WHA, there was an insurance person who was there, representative, to go through exactly this. I also saw a document that looked to be a list of things that had TA'd or tentatively agreed by Aaron Schrotzberger and Hans, I don't know how to say his last name, Feige, on 1/30 of 23. The very first thing on the list stated the Columbia River Fire and Rescue Board and Local 3215 have agreed to the following. And the first item was MERP has been eliminated and the grievance has been withdrawn. So I think what happened, and Chief Sanchez does challenge the questioning that Melton is having in this meeting. And what he's saying is that's been discussed. That's not the purpose of this meeting. What he was stating was, I know now that it was because of this, the union saying, hey, we need to have this meeting with this healthcare person there. And Sanchez said, we can meet about this separately. It's already been litigated, but that's not the purpose of this meeting. I did not at any point see Chief Sanchez threaten to discipline him. I watched the whole thing. That was never said. Could they have talked about that too? Yeah, they probably could have talked about that too. But it was not inexplicably. Jimmy Sanchez inexplicably ordered him not to ask questions. Never ordered him not to ask questions. He did challenge what he was doing and stated he explained his perspective on what the meeting was for and offered to meet with them later at a different meeting to talk about the MERP, which I asked Chief Sanchez if that request ever came from anybody from the union to discuss the MERP, and it never did. Eric Smythe allegedly told a very graphic story about his genitals to someone in the question, am I hearing things? To 3 female administrative personnel, only to loudly retell the same story to Joel Medina, where they joked about it within earshot of at least one CRFR employee for approximately 10 minutes afterward. And this claim was written, just pulled from the, based on allegations in the lawsuit. I didn't attempt to interview any of the 3 women who were involved for obvious reasons. I did talk to Chief Smythe about the investigation. He said that it was an incident that resulted from him ripping his pants, getting out of a vehicle, arriving to help somebody with a fire alarm, and he wasn't wearing underwear. And he said it was embarrassed about the situation, and they had this conversation. He said he didn't say anything that could be characterized as very graphic in relation to his genitals. I can't assess this claim without interviewing other people who were there. I took my statement, but I don't know more than that unless I could interview the three women who were present. Eric Smythe had a grievance filed against him citing he contributed to a hostile work environment. And so this one was sort of a long response. This involved Nina, Ms. Kerbryant, who I talked to over the phone. Chief Smythe's characterization of this was they were at a training at a church that everybody is at. He's getting down on his knees to do CPR or something like this. Is complaining about his knees hurting as he gets down. Ms. Kerbryant is walking by and he said something like, it sucks getting old, doesn't it? She said, are you calling me old? He said, no, I'm saying we're old. He said, they're about the same age. Or she's a little bit older than him. It sounds like he knew right away she didn't like it. He said to her, according to him, no disrespect intended. And he ended up going back, having a conversation with Chief Medina and wrote a memorandum about the thing, basically acknowledging that he had probably shouldn't have done that, should have been more careful and didn't intend any harm. I asked him for a copy of what he had sent to Chief Medina, which he provided. And it was a memo that basically reiterated what he said, and he'd sent it within, I think, a week or a few days of this conversation. I talked to Ms. Kerbryant over the phone. She said she had brought up two issues. She said that Chief Smythe had just flat out told her she was old. She didn't agree with his characterization. And then there was, they were at a restaurant around Thanksgiving in Rainier, and he had made a derogatory comment about some union people. It's written in here, I'm not gonna say it here. And she confronted him about it. Ms. Kerbryant said that she had gone to Aaron Schrossberger and they took this complaint that she had to Hans, say his name again? Feige. Thanks. And he gave it back to her and I think said, go give it to your supervisor, who I think at the time would have been Halsey. Ultimately, what she said to me, she said that this was not a hostile work environment complaint that she had made. Her quote to me was, my observation is that this has been an extraordinarily hostile work environment at CRFR, and my complaint against Chief Smythe was only one very small, tiny thing. And I had asked her, I said, so was this just I characterized it something like some dumb things that a chief had said, and she said yes. I did talk to Hans Feige, and he had a completely different recollection of what the complaint was. His recollection was that Ms. Kerbryant had been moved to the admin building and didn't like it. She thought it was loud. And his memory was that she wished she had stayed at, I think she had been at the St. Helens station. So the allegation is just not factually not accurate as it was not a hostile work environment complaint. I can't corroborate her complaints about what she said that he had said. If you did, you could say, hey, those are things somebody definitely should not be saying. I do think there's a distinction. I think like this document, when an allegation is made like this, just like a hostile work environment, that carries a lot of weight, a lot more weight than, people are going to say stupid things and make mistakes around here. But to the bar of a hostile work environment filed against him, that is not what took place. Eric Smythe and Joel Medina informed former employee Jennifer Motherway that they're going to eliminate her role as PIO in response to filing a potential BOLI claim. This one's fairly simple in that Joel Medina was the fire chief, not Eric Smythe. Eric was present for a meeting that he remembered that was about overtime and her status as a PIO, and did that status require that they pay her overtime? But that was a fire chief thing. That's on the fire. Whatever happened to that, I didn't even look into it. But that is on the chief, not one of his subordinates who was at the meeting. We're getting there. Eric Smythe allegedly made a comment referring to seeing the back of Chief Sanchez's head because Sanchez will be giving him a blowjob. That came from the lawsuit. I talked to several people. Chief Smythe had said that present in the room, he said that this had taken place at the Deer Island Fire Station. Present in the room were Kate Leonard, Chief Medina, and Jimmy Sanchez. He said he thought Annika Todd was in the building, but in another room. I interviewed those folks. Ms. Leonard said that to her memory, Jeremy Leonard was also there, but I asked him, he didn't remember anything about this. What Chief Smythe said was what this was really about was the budget. He said, all I better see is you brought this new kid in here. All I better see is the back of his head figuring out what's wrong with the budget. Because as he said, the two prior people were saying different things about the budget. Medina brings in Chief Sanchez and he wants somebody to figure out the budget. All I better see is the back of his head. I interviewed Ms. Leonard separately. She remembered it being something about the budget, and she was fairly unequivocal that it was not. She didn't remember anything about it being about a blowjob or oral sex or anything. She knew that the conversation was about the budget. I think I could ask him, and he'd probably convince himself. This conversation, as I talked to Chief Sanchez about it, it just makes him mad. One of the comments he made is, you would know if you had said something like that because I'd have sued you. He's convincing enough. I truly believe that had it been about oral sex, he would have raised hell with everybody because it offends him to even hear that this allegation. And I think had it truly been said, there's no evidence that that's what was said. But I don't think that's valid because I think Sanchez would have let everybody know at the time. Eric Smythe, being a longstanding healthcare committee member, agreed and admitted to members of local 3215 that the process to change healthcare benefits had not been followed when the district froze monies related to the district's MERP, constituting an unfair labor practice, and did not act upon this knowledge. I think where this came from was the same meeting that I talked about that is on video that involved the firefighter and this MERP plan coming up. And I watched the video and I actually played the video when I interviewed Chief Smythe about it. He didn't seem completely certain in the video, that was my impression, of all the details and remembering, and he really didn't even when I talked to him, but he did remember a couple of things. What he was talking about, I don't know if that's what, I don't think this is necessarily what the union heard. I don't know exactly what they heard, but he talked about there were two prior employees who had made some decision about the MERP, not about it going away, but something about how something related to some funding and between the MERP and another plan, maybe the VIVA. But it happened in 2016 or 17. He gave me the names of the two people who he said were there, and they said that they were okay with this decision that was being made about how money went back and forth between these two. Chief Smythe said that he asked them, well, don't you have to go back and ask the union about that? And they said, no, they authorized us to be here and make decisions. He wasn't sure if that was certain or if that was true. Either way, these are people that the union has sent to this meeting. Again, this is what Chief Smythe was talking about. I don't know if this is what they thought he was talking about, but what he said in that meeting, this is what Chief Smythe was talking about. And that's really the crux of the issue, is this is what he was saying. I think that they might have interpreted that it was about the end of the MERP. I don't know. It is not a manager's job to correct what union employees are doing inside of their union, or to go to the union executive board and say, hey, did you know your people? That's not really his responsibility. I don't think it's any manager's responsibility. 12, whereas Eric Smythe promoted Jeremy Leonard to lead mechanic despite the fact that Leonard did not possess the minimum required NFPA qualifications for the position. Deputy Chief Smythe did not promote Jeremy Leonard. The first thing in his entire file that is written that he was promoted to lead mechanic is dated September 1st of 2022, and it is a pay increase, and it's signed by Joe Medina. Also, I got copies from his file of certifications for emergency vehicle technician, for ambulances, fire apparatus, and fire pumps and accessories. All that he got these certifications in 2019. From what I can tell, they're good for 5 years, and that is on every one of these certificates. So he has a certificate, and Chief Sanchez is not the one who promoted him. Eric Smythe initiated the disciplinary process on a firefighter/paramedic when the district had no existing policy, which Smythe later acknowledged. I talked to the people involved here. There was no discipline initiated. This to Chief Smythe was a counseling session. He did not document it. I had somebody from the union tell me that documenting a counseling session is a step in discipline. That is not true. Discipline is there was no punishment there of any kind. He was not disciplined. And even writing down a document, that in and of itself is not discipline. I looked through this firefighter's entire personnel file. There was nothing in it that even talked about this, which corroborated what Chief Smythe said, that this was not disciplinary in his mind. As to the policy, that there was no existing policy, I know there's this conversation that my understanding is that Chief Sanchez at some point had sent a message to the union saying, hey, as of right now, we're going under the Lexipol policy, which was agreed by the union. So there was this lack of clarity as to what their policy manual was.
I didn't, it was me, not Chief Sanchez.
Um,
It was me that sent.
He sent the memo saying Lexipol is effective. He's my kid.
Yes.
Whose decision was it?
Chief's decision, I just sent the email out.
Right, I think that's,
Yes, sir.
so, okay, ultimately, Joe Medina is the one who made the decision that we're going to. Okay, thank you for the correction. When that happened, I think people thought, well, we agreed this policy, so now there's no policy. And that's not how it works. You grieve what is brought forward as a new policy, you just revert to the old one. So to say that there was no existing policy, that's not really accurate. And Lexipol, there might be some, I don't think their discipline policy says discipline, it says complaint. It just uses different verbiage, but it is a discipline policy. Whereas it was discovered by review of Jimmy Sanchez's resume and speaking directly to his former employers that Sanchez never assumed the position of acting battalion chief or even as a first level officer, despite proclaiming under oath that he had. Eric Smythe also incorrectly stated that Sanchez was an acting battalion chief in an introductory email sent out to all CRFR personnel. I'll address the Chief Smythe first. He sent out an email, right? And it's not his job to dig in, and he just forwarded an email of a new employee. I don't see that as being really valid at all. So I talked to the union. I got the contact information of the person they talked to, who was the union vice president at Flagler County Fire and Rescue. There they use the term write-up. They don't use the term acting. This gentleman told me, he corroborated, he said the same thing, that Chief Sanchez had never done this. While we're on the phone, I said, hey, is there any proof? Like I want paper. Is there something that says some way that I'd be able to show this? He tells me they got the program called Telestaff. And I asked him if he could look up Chief Sanchez while we were on the phone, which he did. And once he got to Chief Sanchez, he told me that he was eligible to write up or act as a lieutenant. That was on whatever this Telestaff does. So it was different than what he was telling me, and I'm not sure that he knew that was the case. I talked to Lenny Insalaco, who was a retired division chief from Flagler County, who had been Chief Sanchez's supervisor. He told me that Chief Sanchez had been on the promotional list for battalion chief, and that when you were on the promotional list, you were eligible to ride up. That way you get experience in hopes that you're going to get promoted off of the list. I said, do you remember specifically like a day that he wrote up? And he said, I can't remember specifically. But he said during COVID, which was this time, he said, we had people out all the time. And so he said he most likely was filling in for short periods of time, acting or riding up as a battalion chief during that period of time. I talked to Kelly Papa, the human resources manager at Flagler County. She shared payroll documentation showing that Chief Sanchez had worked 60.75 hours as a ride-up lieutenant. To my question about Chief Sanchez riding up as a battalion chief, Ms. Papa forwarded an email from Chief Tucker of Flagler County. In the email, he wrote, Mr. Sanchez was on the battalion chief's eligibility list, but did not ride up during this time. So eligible to be acting, but to him, he had not. He said that Chief Sanchez did not. I asked Chief Sanchez about this, and he talked about during COVID, there were a lot of opportunities for people, hey, I'm going to be an hour or two late. And he said, if you were riding up for less than 3 hours, he never documented it. That's why, according to him, that there were no documents of this. So in terms of the claim, he did ride up as a lieutenant, and there's documented proof. It's not what somebody says. He was on the battalion chief list and eligible to act as a battalion chief. He states that he did. I can't corroborate that with anything that's on paper, but he did give me what was a credible statement.
And my supervisor said this.
Whereas just prior to I have two more. Whereas just prior to the beginning arbitration over line salary, Jimmy Sanchez and two board members admitted they felt there was a high likelihood they were going to lose arbitration. Said individuals had the option to follow their original CBA, which would have eliminated the need for arbitration process, which is very time consuming and it Chief Sanchez was not the decision maker on whether or not anyone was going to arbitration. Also, I've been through a number of arbitrations at my own agency on the union side, on the management side, and I've done an arbitration for a dispatch center, the Clackamas County's dispatch center. Anytime that you're talking about an arbitration, going through an arbitration, and once everything's submitted, you're having conversations about what's our likelihood of winning. Just like in this case, no one knows. And so it is commonplace to have conversations about whether or not we're going to win. There's no validity to this. It's not his decision. This is a normal conversation somebody's going to have. And while the cost of arbitration is expensive, most people who go for one do a cost benefit analysis, and sometimes it's also very expensive if you're on the losing end of one. So, so the last one is about this place being a toxic environment and a bunch of people have been lost, and it names everybody. And again, Aaron Peterson told me when I met with the union folks, both times I met with him, he said, this was really a cry for help. This document, this second vote of no confidence. And I believe that to be true. He said, we submitted one, nothing had happened yet. And not his words, mine, we're dying here. This was a cry for help. He said that both times. And I think it sort of reads like one. I think ultimately there were 16 total claims. During the investigation, I found evidence to completely refute 9 of them. 3 of them were ultimately against Chief Medina, including the last one. I did not investigate these claims or interview them. One of the claims I cannot determine as it's subject to a lawsuit, and the other 3 are not as unequivocal in their determination, though there was no evidence to prove them to be accurate in their entirety. There were a couple that I just, like the meeting about the MERP. I don't, yeah, you could have let him talk about it, but was Chief Sanchez out of line saying, this is what the purpose of the meeting was? We've got an expert here for that purpose. That's not crazy. And he also offered, let's have a meeting later. I will give you what you want to do. So that's something that I would describe as, I can't prove this is absolutely not true. This one I sort of like, Okay, he don't let you talk about the work, but he didn't threaten to discipline you. So ultimately, what I think went on here, my opinion is I don't, I think this is a document that shouldn't be taken lightly in terms of if you're going to go public and call out people, managers for something like this. I do think that I was surprised at how little, I know that I heard somebody in that meeting say that these claims had been documented and investigated. And I would have thought there would have been a whole lot more than that. Because this is pretty serious stuff to go public and say these sorts of things. So I don't really find anything in this that I think is valid. I will say the reason behind it, just like the first one, I think that things are so toxic, people are kind of grabbing at straws. I don't think this is a straw that probably should have been grabbed for. Anybody have any questions?
No, I think that was pretty good. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, we have copies of both of these, correct?
Yeah, so I have copies here, to be honest, so there's about 50 pages I've written. I've read it a number of times. Aiken has. I caught a couple little minuscule things in these. So Aiken has the purest, cleanest. I literally saw them this morning. I will say too, I had thought, and you can read this, I've got a bunch of documentation, emails, pay records, and all this sort of stuff. And I will retain all that stuff. I was going to put exhibits, pretty soon it was going to be too burdensome. There was too much. It would have been confusing, but I have all of it. The vast majority of the documents, I actually got from the district. There were a few that I got from Flagler County, but if you have questions or, hey, I'd like to see this document or something, or if you want any questions offline, feel free to contact me. I will tell you my work here is finished. These reports are done. And so you have them. And I'm not doing any. I'm done.
Thank you for your time here. Yeah. Oh, well,
Right, that's right.
I believe that you have the executive summary here. And that's been delivered. And as far as we're concerned, that's the document we've discussed in this public meeting, so it's available publicly, as is Rob Moody's stuff, both investigations that Jim referred to. As to the lengthy detailed report with all of the names and my thought as I'm standing here is that the district would be well advised to treat that document the same way as the district redid the other major investigation done a couple of years ago, where it just there's an executive summary that came to the board, and Adam Collier retained the detailed investigation with all of the statements and names and whatnot. I don't think so. I believe Adam Collier kept investigating. Well, Adam Collier has the district contracted with a private investigator. I don't remember who it was. I don't even remember who the investigation was directed against.
It was the first hospital workplace in Miami, quite investigated, and they got sealed by the DA as very fine privilege.
Oh, all right.
Told us we would get to see some of that.
so I guess that, and we did,
That's what his question.
Yeah, I think that first one was, attorney-client privilege. It was sealed, not to be released. I think Adam has that. But this one here, I think it sounds to me like, and A can correct me if I'm wrong. We can do the executive summary, but all the other stuff in there, that whether it needs to be redacted or something, that's more we're gonna keep ourselves.
I think they're talking about the guy in Grants Pass did the other one, the one that Adam Collier had.
That's the other one. Yeah, but are you talking about the Grants Pass one, Ryan, or are you talking about Jim Band's?
I think he's talking about the long form of the one I had.
All right. Well, I'm not gonna,
I voted to spend the extra money to have, Mr. Van do this, additional investigation, in the first one as well, so.
okay, well, if,
Let me just say one thing. So, hey, Ryan, this is Jim. So the second investigation, you have the whole thing. There's no long and short form on that. Okay. Well, then you can pick up. We'll have copies for you on Thursday. Just for clarity, I have, for the first investigation, there's a long form and then there's a short form.
First relates to.
And the first relates to the hostile work environment. The second investigation, there's only one report. And you, and I have sitting here on the table copies for all you guys, the short form of the first and the only form of the second investigation. Aiken has digital copies of both of those, and he has the long form of the first investigation.
in the first investigation, the only difference, the summary is set forth in full in the first investigation, and then it's simply, it doesn't have, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't have any information that isn't stated in the summary. It just has more specific information and statements attributed to people by name.
So mostly the quotes are in the first, are the different. So I interviewed everyone in this room, a bunch of other people about what it was like to work here, and they were sharing every detail about working under the prior administration, that sort of stuff. So all of the documentation of what people actually said in interviews, that's what's in the first one. And then I make a determination based on what they said. The short form is the same conclusion. It just doesn't include, I sat down with Ted Peterson and he said this. I sat down with Ben Davis and he said this, that sort of stuff. And the main reason was you want to know whether or not all these people want everybody to know how they felt and what they went through, how taxing it was to them and that sort of stuff. And that's not for me to decide, that's for you to decide.
I'm sorry? Say again?
So Ryan, let's check in with Chief Smythe when you see him on Thursday. Yeah,
Good night.
okay, thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, all right. We're moving on. All right, next up, Jeff. Thank you for being patient.
My pleasure. Thank you for letting me be here. I appreciate it. I work at your discretion. So if you want me here next month and the next month and next month, let me know. Always happy to be here. Now, I'm actually here in two different capacities tonight, and I want to separate those so that there's no question. Came up to talk about the insurance, and then I came up in different capacities to do a training. Where do you want me to start? With insurance?
Let's start there.
Please. When we received notice that special districts were going to non-renew a critical part of your policy, the employment practices piece, sat down with staff and we bifurcated the work into two separate piles. We split everything down into two different groups. The first was to find another carrier that would provide similar type coverage. And the second pile that we made was to try to work with SDAO to change their opinion of where they were at and get them to offer a renewed piece. We were successful with both. First, I'll talk about a quote that will pick up much of what SDAO has said they will not offer renewal on. Now, keep in mind, SDAO's coverage document is extremely broad, so this is going to be narrower, but it is an option that I want you to know about. This particular carrier that has responded, and I have more work in front of us, is offering $1 million of coverage, which today you have 10 million, so it's significantly less. And it has what's called a retained, a retention or a deductible, depending on the type of coverage, $100,000 to $150,000. So it's limited. The annual premium on this would be $67,016.50. And it does have some other limitations that I will get you more information on. We have ordered a copy of what the policy would read. This is just a quote that we've received just this last week, I think on November 6th. So we do have an option. The particular group that provided this is called AmWins. They're one of the largest surplus lines brokerage firms in the country. They have about 4,000 employees. They have an office in Portland. This particular quote came out of their Tampa Bay, Florida office. The gentleman we work with quite a bit. Please note that there are many surplus lines brokers. Most of them work with the same carriers. So rather than to shotgun this out and go to a dozen different brokers and have them go to the same companies and create some concern with the companies, we didn't do that. We went to one of the largest. If I need be, I'll go to others, but I would prefer not to do that. When an underwriter gets 5 quotes from 5 different brokers, it says, what problem here? This was with full disclosure of everything that has transpired, with one minor exception, because it hadn't occurred when we sent in the application. They know about the claims that exist. They have done their due diligence, so it's solid. The one piece of information they did not have was the reserve that was set up by SDAO, because SDAO had not set up the reserve at that juncture. I don't think that's going to be a material issue here or alter that. So we do have a backup offer. I think more important and more appropriate, we did have quite a bit of luck with SDAO back and forth. We sat down and initially there were concerns about future litigation, future situations that had not developed yet. And before I get too far in front of myself, I want to back up. The importance of going to SDAO is we like to be consistent. Anytime things are moving and changing in an organization and we have open claims, to switch horses in the middle of the stream is not wise. Who's going to be on first? Who's going to pay this claim? Who's not? If the forms are not the same, which they are not, one carrier could say, I would cover that. The other would say, no, I wouldn't. Now, most things are what's called an occurrence, a specific moment in time. Much of this is not. Much of this would be over a long period of time. So staying with special districts would be my first choice if we can. Initially, special districts was concerned about future activity, future claims downstream, and future actions that the board could take that could create additional litigation. We worked through those issues. Initially, SDAO came out and said, okay, we will reconsider. We want a significant deductible. And as we worked through that, they agreed not to do that. So what SDAO is offering is they have coverage today, to continue coverage this next year without any restrictions. other than that you follow legal advice and their advice from their attorneys. So as long as we stay high and tight with how we do things, hiring, firing, promoting, demoting, those kinds of things, and they're in the loop, we have no problems moving forward. So I will tell you that I'm proud of my team and also your team here with the data that you got me and the things you're doing right now, how you're conducting the board meetings. I've had a number of conversations with Ryan over the last month and a half, and I think everybody's working well together. So I have good news is what I would like to suggest. There probably will be a rate increase. I'm not expecting a huge, but it's certainly not going to be $67,000. You will see what I believe to be a fairly modest rate increase. Now, I expected dancing and screaming and hollering at this juncture. Thank you for the smile. 2 smiles.
No, yeah, it's my.
We've had the honor of working with public entities since the 70s and have a very large volume of business with special districts. They're owned by their membership, and I think their heart's in the right spot, and I think they do a good job. And I think having that long-term relationship and the volume of clients and having worked with them on other issues, there was a lot of trust involved. So it was my pleasure always.
I will say good work. I was just, based on past experience, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop.
I don't like surprises, so
I don't either, but that was good news. Thank you.
good news.
We're finishing up tonight on a high note.
And then the fun news will be later when we do the training.
You bet.
Thank you.
Okay. That's awesome there.
Let me, if I can add one thing.
Yes, sir.
SEO, this has all been verbal. I have to get there written. I'll get it to you and they'll tell you what the terms are. But I feel very confident from the conversations that you'll be very pleased.
Awesome. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
Okay. Interim fire chief announcement. No, we have not. So, no, we have not, we've not done that. So, no, we've got some time to, digest, think and stuff like that about the 2 people that we interviewed. And, Brian, you and I met with, the 2 board members, and it was Chief Smythe, Brian, myself, that met with, the 2 other board members and Chief Pritchard from Scappoose. And, do we have a thoughts and a decision or anything like that of where we're going to go? And that's open to. Rick? Well, we can.
Yeah, I think we need to discuss it some more maybe, but I was very pleased with both the candidates. And both had a lot to offer in different ways. I liked, put off the payment of one for a year, but he was also the most expensive. I did like Mr. Harry, or Mr. Palmer. And if he would be, want to sit down with us to work out some details of maybe staying at Drive Station for housing stuff, he seems to be open to that. I would certainly like to move forward with him as an interim to help us, get things get our feedback under ourselves. So, but I also still care about the budget. Going forward.
And what I say, what was yours and what was these conversations? I Bill and Chief Smythe, you were there as well, so you can chime in as you choose. There's no interest at this time. They're busy as well. Chief Pritchard and them, they have their own department to run and manage and stuff. And so to me, it's not doable. And I think that was pretty clear that was not something they were interested. We had a good lunch, parted on good terms. you know, we're still gonna go to them and ask some help, because they've been in that situation not too long ago themselves. And, I've gone through some stuff just like we're going through. So we are going to lean on them for some advice and some lessons learned that I think will be very valuable with our neighbor. But I don't think they're in a position at this time to give us that support. So, and
Like, the second gentleman, more than the first gentleman, I think they both have assets, I think they were budget constraints, and, so, that's kind of where I'm at.
yeah. No, I agree. I appreciate both of them coming. I think knowing the options right now, we've got Chief Smythe, correct? We've got the two Palmers, or the, two Roys. I liked, Roy Palmer, I thought. In terms of direction wise, I thought what he was saying was good. Obviously, we're dealing with budget constraints, so that's what I have on that. Well, I'll make this pretty simple. My thought here tonight is, especially after hearing the reports that we just got and the information that's just been presented to us. I like what Ryan just said about, you know, we have some resources here in the county and outside that can be helpful, for some guidance, so things like that, of like, you know, we left that meeting with Scappoose of, we're gonna get together with board members again and have some more conversations and learn some things as we go forward as a board. I know that Chief Smythe has had conversation with Chief Pritchard. We've been talking to, you know, folks and stuff like that. And like I said, after the information presented tonight, I make a motion that we appoint Eric Smythe as the interim chief. Effective, if it's approved, it'd be effective immediately. And that's taking in all the stuff that we kind of heard, learned, and talked to. Correct. I can amend my motion too, if we need to do that. I will retract the first one and I'll make a motion that we appoint Chief Smythe as the interim chief. There is no added pay, benefits, or anything like that, but he will be the interim chief. Any further discussion?
Fine,
Okay. Now, also then eventually we're gonna need to look for the permanent chief. Do we have a timetable for this? Well, I would defer that answer to actually Chief Sanchez, because he's, yeah, we can revisit it after the end of let's get through our budget first of this year to all the way to June 30th.
Let's correct the audits and then
Yep.
and then you have a full picture, so by July. We should have all kinds of answers.
Yeah, we need to see where the numbers come
Yeah,
out.
arbitration next week.
Yep, we have a lot of other big hurdles in there that I don't want to start putting out that now. I think that's about 6 months premature. That's a great question.
Let's make the department July first.
Yeah, let's get through the next 6 months. Any further discussion? Chief Smythe. You willing to accept that?
Yep.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. There's a motion and a second on the floor to appoint Chief Smythe as the interim fire chief. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Board member interview date. We already have that, so,
So it closed.
yep,
You have two candidates. The recommendation would be that that special meeting you're having on the 29th, correct, 29th of November. It's, I believe it starts at 6. If there's any possibility of you guys starting your meeting at 5, we can reach out to the two individuals that expressed interest and see if they can come in. You guys can conduct interviews, potentially at the end select one. And that individual will then stay and obviously hear the executive session that deals with SDAO and the litigation update they're gonna bring you guys,
That's gonna be close.
which will be closed, but you can, if at all possible, before you can meet at 5, interview both. You guys go into regular session, you can elect one or appoint one, and then you guys go into executive session with SDAO to go over the legal update.
I will attempt to call it. I will.
okay,
Let's do that.
let's do a motion on that.
For the November 29th.
So, and since I wrote it down, I'll do, so we're gonna do the board member interview day, will be November 29th at 1700, site to be determined.
It is at admin office, 270 Columbia Boulevard.
Oh, it'll be at the admin office, okay? So November 29th, 23rd, November 29th of 2023 at 1700, we'll have a board member interview date with our meeting there, our special meeting that we set up at the admin office. That's the motion.
I'll second.
Second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, we're set. We also need to set up a, RFP meeting.
For the second. I mean, not the second. The 22nd,
Can we go with the 21st?
either one, Monday or Tuesday.
Okay, let's go with what's the deadline?
So we wanna, I can pull on, yeah.
I think the deadline's the 22nd, correct? Yeah,
But we can make a decision that day.
I will Tuesday, I can try to get it off, if that works better for you guys. Like
21st?
I work the 21st.
Is that a Tuesday?
That's a Tuesday.
Okay,
But like I said, I can try and get calls now. We have to put our down first.
gotcha.
But you guys are going to, because I'm going to send a notice of intent to award, we're all in agreement with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cause it sounds like it's realistic though. I mean,
It's the only one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure we're in agreement.
I mean, it doesn't sound like big right.
Okay.
So we'll have that RFP meeting on November 21st, 2023. What time do we want to do that? We can do that any time of the day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we could do it where Austin, you guys could do it where you call in, phone in. It's gonna be a basic discussion about the RFP. I mean, Rick doesn't have to drive down from Clatskanie. I mean, you guys can take the time during the day. Just make an option is that you guys would probably have it done in less than an hour.
I mean, it could be a quick thing.
What's a good time? Actually, let's back this up. Before we go further, so. I have a motion on this. Can I make a motion? We're gonna hold our RFP meeting November 21st, 2023. Is a motion.
I'll second that.
Have a second. Okay, discussion, what time? Rick, what's good for you on that day?
I can do it during the day, that's, Tuesday. It'd be better probably for me to do it during the middle of the day. But during the day, just that time I'll be there.
You said,
Well, you can call in.
Yeah, tell me I can call in. So, you don't have to remember.
So Luke, you wanna? Okay, so Luke, you don't wanna do it middle of the day, you wanna shoot for 1300?
Okay,
That work?
I will try and get your time on.
Okay,
Or you can do it on the phone too.
Well, he's still gonna take the time off from, yeah. Okay,
So 1,300 on the 21st.
yep, so we got that, so. Say, I can't. Yep. Okay, so we have RP meeting November 21st, 2023, 1,300. Any further discussion? It shouldn't take that long.
I mean, realistically, if you guys are intent to award, we don't have to do it.
No, we're gonna do it.
Okay.
We're gonna have it.
I'm just saying for the RFP, if you're, you know,
We're gonna we'll do it. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And we'll do that at admin office as well. Perfect. Okay. I think we're boom, boom, boom. Well, I think I got that. I think that's it.
we're gonna, I think you guys have it. I think you have the class, I think is what you were saying before. For you.
Yes, yes. I don't think we need to do that though during public meeting. It's a class.
That's up to, that's up to you.
We're all together, like, all these buildings.
Correct. Yep. Yep. So, all right. That takes care of our normal business. Now we're gonna go through some class training
I wasn't gonna ask a question.
with Jack.
Yeah.
And thank you, Rick, for that. No problem. Yep, and then once we're done with the class, we'll come into, board member comments and voice out.
Thank you. Now I'm gonna put on a different hat. I'm right now, representing Oregon Fire Chiefs Association. I'm their executive director, and OFDA, I do their safety work. Those two associations.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
I won't take it personal that you're leaving.
Class already.
Those two organizations joined together with special districts a number of years ago to create a number of trainings. At the time, and this goes back to 1990, Oregon's having a lot of challenges with lawsuits, a lot of injuries and fatalities. The associations came together to design this program to reduce injuries to our firefighters, but also prevent lawsuits. This is one of 8 classes that are approved to get you the best practices credit. So having me here tonight is worth 2% off on the insurances this next year. And the rules are pretty simple. You just have to be in the room. You don't have to be awake. You just have to be here. So STO is pretty lenient with that. This particular class is called Duties and Responsibilities. We're going to talk about I'm not an attorney, so I do risk management for them, and I do safety work. This class doesn't hit the laws. It really talks about the impact and what you need to do as board members. I want to thank you, first of all, for having me up. I know that some of your board members have been in training in other classes with special districts, and they have received a great deal of knowledge about the different laws and whatnot. I think anytime boards are getting training is a good thing. And before I go too far, because Chief Smythe is now the new acting chief, I'd love to offer to Chief and to the board, wearing my other hat with the Oregon Fire Chiefs, but also the Division Secretary of the Western Fire Chiefs, is mentoring and coaching. If you're looking at
Absolutely, sir.
a couple of chiefs.
You know I call you anytime, Jeff. You know that. I call you all the time.
I work 24/7, so if you got my cell phone, it's good. If it's after midnight, give me a minute to wake up. But I'll hook you up with a couple of chiefs that I think might be great in different areas. If you go to the bottom of the first page.
Well, he's got.
I'm hurt. Let him know that he's gonna get this. I'm gonna meet with you, Ryan, at a later date over lunch, and you're gonna have to listen to this. Is that all right? No worries. I won't take it personal. We'll talk downstream. By the way, normally what we try to do is feed the group, and unfortunately with this being in the middle of a board meeting, that did not happen. Next time we'll do that if we do it early. If you go to the bottom of the first page, in my office, we keep what I call the sheet. And we do research every month on lawsuits and injuries. Major events are going on in the fire service and have for a long, long time. In fact, so long we used to have to go down to the U of O library to pull the newspapers to do the work. What I want to point out is when we started doing this years ago, most of the issues that were going on in the fire service were operations driven. Something went wrong in operation, there was a lawsuit, we didn't get the fire out, there were other things going on. That's not true today. Almost everything I see today is human related. And I put this in there to give you a feel for what we do. This is a 5-day period of time, several years ago. Pennsylvania, there was a suit over sexual harassment with a minor. In Mississippi, there was a $2.5 million lawsuit over dreadlocks. There was a promotional, an individual that did not get the job sued. They had dreadlocks. They thought they were being discriminated against. Colorado, there was a manager sued over discrimination. In Virginia, there were employees, 17 that were sued over a bullying issue. That sadly, you may remember it, involved a suicide of a young female firefighter. We had 10, I love this one. We had 10 residents in one community that wanted their own fire station. So they sued because they felt that they should have their own station and their own firefighters. They lost that lawsuit, by the way. Rhode Island, we had an employee suit, the Department of Discrimination. Illinois, we had a suit over an exam process. Colorado, we had another suit over pornography. In New York, there was an issue involving volunteers and about $5.7 million that were missing. That's the stuff we see. Rarely do we see operation stuff today. Occasionally we'll see an auto accident where an engine company will collide with a vehicle or vice versa, but we just don't see other stuff. Almost everything today involves people and involves harassment. It involves non-operation stuff. It's people, and you've seen it the last 3 years, especially after COVID. You see fights in parking lots. You see people treat wait staff inhumanely. We just live in an angry time. And, I think communication is a big issue, but hopefully tonight I give you a few tools working forward as you run into some of those situations. I do want to point out that studies show that the vast majority of things that happen to a fire district today, we can avoid either through risk management, prevention, or when it occurs, getting engaged early and getting it corrected early rather than letting it go to a lawsuit. Now, I'm not suggesting any way you ever alter records, change records. We never do that. But what I am suggesting is we always strive to do the right thing. 92.5% of stuff we can fix early. 7.5% outside of our control. You might remember a number of years ago, there was a couple of police officers that were killed on I-5. They were south of Salem. They were way off the road, and a civilian, I don't know what they were thinking, they just went way off the road, went underneath the police car and hit the police officers. That's outside of our control. What is inside of our control is about 92.5% of the events, and we can, in fact, alter that outcome. We can either prevent it from happening or correct it in the process. What does that mean and why do we do it? If you look at a risk pyramid, and that's the last slide on your second page, for every one major event, every fatality we have with a firefighter, every lawsuit we have a volume of minors. We had 59 minors. We get 600 close calls. But at the bottom of the pyramid is our culture, how we think, how we work as a team, how we communicate. If we can shrink that baseline, we're going to eliminate almost all injuries, almost all lawsuits to the district, just through good communication, good education. And in the case of firefighter safety, which are my favorite lectures to do, we can reduce the injury rate significantly. Right now, sprains and strains are killing the industry. You're hearing an awful lot about post-traumatic stress. We're working as an association to try to get in front of that power curve. And I think we have some very good things going on that are going to help our firefighters retire out healthy, mentally and physically healthy. The sprains and strains, when I talk to your firefighters, that's really where our firefighters are getting hurt. If you turn to the next page, I'm just going to briefly talk about the laws. Now, I know some of you have gone through some of the special districts classes, but if you turn to the top of page 3, you are formed under a section of Oregon law. In particular, fire is formed under 478, and it defines what you can do. how many board members you have, how they're elected. They define how you operate, the services you can provide. So 478 is, it's a small document. I don't remember whether it's 17 or 19 pages long, but it tells you what you can do. Interestingly, in that document, it tells you have one employee, the fire chief. And that's designed to protect you, but also as board members, you're carrying forward the civilians, your community's wishes, but your chief follows through with them on a day-to-day basis. So you manage one person, that person follows your wishes and manages the rest of the crew. So 478 is short. It's a quick read. If you haven't ever read it, it's probably worth looking at. It tells you essentially you can do fire and EMS. You can't do other things. Before you wanted to do other things, you need to talk to legal and accounting and figure out how you could do that either through a different formation document or something else. But right now you can do fire and EMS. If you go down to the next slide, I'm going to hit these real quickly. After your formation document, the main critical document for you, the tort law 30.260 to 30.300, it tells you how you can be sued, when you can be sued and how much you can be sued for. In the state of Oregon, you can be sued for just over $2 million aggregate, all injured parties, all damaged property, and you have a limit of $10 million. It tells you that a lawsuit, you have to get notice within 180 days, which is a great thing. It's a very short fuse. Most suits in Oregon have a 2-year statute of limitations, and attorneys love to wait. So what happens is something happens, 2 years later, they bring the suit just at the edge of the statute of limitations, realizing people moved away, they passed away, they didn't keep records. And it, in my opinion, it helps the attorney with bringing the suit. 180 days, not so much. 100 days, pretty quick turnaround. You're gonna have good documents. People haven't moved away. That's a good statute of limitations, 180 days. It also gives you a thing called discretionary immunity. It says that essentially, if you look at a situation and make a decision because you don't have unlimited funds, that making that decision means you're protected from suits that were opposed to that decision. Hypothetically, you have limited funds. You need a rescue, a new ambulance, and you want a tender. You decide, well, the ambulance is gonna get a whole lot more miles. We're buying the ambulance, and in 2-3 years, we'll buy the tender. Let's say 6 months later, there's a big fire, and that tender could have made a difference. If somebody tries to sue you for not buying that tender, one of the first defenses your attorneys are going to take is discretionary immunity. You looked at the situation, you made it the best decision that you could under the circumstances. So the tort law is a great piece that protects you and has done very well over the years. It has been pierced on a couple of occasions, but essentially it's very strong. And every year the limit of liability goes up just a little bit. There's an inflation clause in there. There are civil rights. And had we had this lecture 4 or 5 years ago, I would have told you there's 8 federally protected classes. You know them: race, color, creed, national origin. And I would have told you there's 18 Oregon protected classes. What I'm going to tell you today, after COVID, is we have a plethora of federal protected classes. Everybody's. And Oregon is the same way. We have so many that you can't count it. It's more. What I want to coach you as a board and our firefighters, everybody's protected. We treat everybody with respect. We're always careful what we say and how we say it. Bite your tongue. There are going to be days and times when you want to call somebody maybe something less than human. Don't do that. It always, because everything you do is discoverable. We always want to treat everybody with respect. Here's the rule that I will give you with that, with protected classes. If you don't want on the front page of the Oregonian, don't do it, right? That's a good rule. Going into the Oregon laws that specifically impact you. ORS 192 is public records and open meetings. And what I want to coach you on public records is everything you do virtually is a public record, whether it's a text message, an email message, notes you take, almost all of it is discoverable. If you ever get a public records request, and it's possible you may get one, get it into the department immediately. We get it up to STAO, and they're going to immediately respond back to you. yes, comply with this records request, or wait a minute, this record is not a public record. It might be medical records or some kind of record that is not public, and they'll tell you, no, don't give that record out. But get third-party advice. That's really, really critical to do. As you, I'm gonna leave public records and get into open meetings. Under ORS 192, there are 5 different types of meetings you can have. This is your general board meeting, happens once a month. You can have executive session, you can have work sessions, you can do other different types of meetings. But you want to follow those meetings rules specifically. A place where board members get into trouble is going in and out of executive session. It's critical that you do that right. And it's not a bad idea to have your attorney here to take you in and out of executive session. If you don't have your attorney here to do that, what I would strongly recommend that you do is be prepared if you're going to go into executive session and know exactly how you do it. You read the rule. Hypothetically, it would go under ORS 192.660, and you went into executive session tonight. Under ORS 192.660, PRIN 2, PRIN 4, and I'm not sure that that's the correct PRIN. We're going to executive session under communications from our attorney, or whatever that case may be. Everybody leaves, as I did. You have the right to invite people to stay, your attorney, maybe potentially others. You discuss business, but do not vote. You come out of executive session, read the law, invite everybody back in, and then you're in your meeting. This is not law, but I highly recommend it. If you come out of executive session and you need to do a vote, I would not recommend you come out of executive session and immediately do a roll call vote. Because in this state, civilians don't like executive session. They think you're scheming and planning to do things, and they don't like things done behind closed doors. So if you come out of executive session, and immediately go into a vote without a discussion, they feel disenfranchised. I always recommend that you have a hearty discussion after you come out of executive session and then do your vote. Make sure that civilians feel as though they're somewhat franchised. You don't have to do that, but I think it's a good practice. When you're in executive session, if you're a doodler, you make notes. Realize that if you leave those notes, that media could pick them up. And they may not be confidential. Realize that also media has the right to stay in executive session. They will not normally print what you talk about unless you leave what got you into executive session. So hypothetically tonight, you're talking to legal about different issues. And while you're in executive session, somebody says, well, what are we gonna do about buying that new fire truck? The way that's gonna come out on the Oregonian tomorrow is in an illegal executive session, Columbia River Fire and Rescue discussed this. You can't unring that bell. So just stay right on the point, talk about it, come out, and then do your vote or do whatever business that you need to do. Anytime you don't have to go into executive session, I recommend you not. It's always good to be fully transparent with the public. Questions on that piece, open meetings or public records? You do have the ability to charge. I know that a former attorney many years ago, Ken Jones, set you up, and I don't remember what it is, but you can charge, I don't know, it's $30 an hour for time to get public records and so much per sheet of paper. Do you remember what it is?
Well, we have a policy that's it's actually less than 30.
It's important you have that.
Yes, it's less than we have a review from a lawyer, right? We actually are charging less than what we could charge. We could charge more.
We had a situation a number of years ago in Portland when where an angry civilian went to a district and gave a legal request and want all your records for the last 10 years. Can you imagine what that would do? I mean, you couldn't do it. That particular manager of that public entity had been around for a while and they had the same policy or similar policy you have. Well, the individual come back tomorrow and I'll have a plan for you. The individual came back the next day and said, hey, listen, we're going to start to work on this. We think it's going to cost you about $32,000. We'd like to get about $5,000 to get started on this. The individual said, you know what I want is last Thursday's board minutes. You know, that for whatever reason, people can be a little bit tough to work with, and having that policy in place is a good policy. 243 is a little known benefits law. It does a couple of things. It gives our firefighters a small amount of accidental death coverage for silicosis and black lung. It was very ineffective, but it also allows your paid firefighters to take their benefits with them when they retire. They have to pay for them, but they have the right to take those until they're 65. That law is going to be rewritten sometime in the future. It needs to be, just wanted you to be aware it was on the books. 244 is ethics. When you pick up 192, Open Meeting Public Records, I think it's about 80 pages long, and it is a very tough read. If you have insomnia, this will fix it, because it goes 192, electronic records, everything, how it's protected and or how it's not protected. 244 ethics integrates with it. So you can't read one without the other, but 244 is ethics, and essentially, if you every couple of years realize these change as we go through different sessions, but realize under 244 really what they're looking for is personal gain. If you have knowledge, you leave here and you know that there's going to be a new development in your community, you run out and buy land there to make a windfall profit, that's illegal. You can't do that. It's an ethics violation. Any gifts. You can take food up to $49.99. You can take a plaque with your name on it. That's considered de minimis in value. But you can take no gifts of any kind. Now, there are ways you can skirt the law. Don't do it. Never looks good. If your Motorola comes through town and says, hey, I'm going to give you a phone, and 6 months later you bought the vote to do a Motorola contract, and it pops up on the front page of their building, it never looks good to do that. So don't take that. Ethics does not want you getting gifts of any kind, and it's just not worth it to put yourself into that kind of scrutiny. 279 is the purchase law. As you buy things of certain value, you have to bid that out. So if you're buying a fire truck, you got to bid it out, unless you go through one of the group purchasing organizations that's already. Yeah. Just realize when you're spending money, it's a big deal, and especially because this one comes with personal liability. So if you violate the purchasing laws, you as a board member now have some personal liability. So make sure that you don't do it. Be high and tight with your money. 294 is your budget law. You make the budget, you start in the springtime, you put it together, you get it to the county in June, the county files will be stated in July. What I want to encourage you about budget law is stay within your budget. If you can't, before you start moving money around, do exactly what you're doing. Talk to the attorney, talk to the accountant, make sure you're on solid ground. 297 is a little known audit and finance law that requires you to have bond or crime coverage that protects the public's money, which you have.
We do through you, through SDA.
Through SDA, you do. 656 is our OSHA and our workers' compensation law. Ironically, although volunteers aren't paid, the state does consider them subject to workers' compensation and to OSHA. OSHA statute that we have to follow. And really why I put that in there is because you're a government body doesn't mean you're not subject to other governments like DEQ and OSHA. There's a thing called ultra vires, and that's actually like your legal scope of authority. And your authority is under 478. So that would mean you're doing something outside of the law. And then personal liability. And this is really what I'm going to talk about a little bit tonight. When you're here, you give this district life. You're all powerful. You make policies and procedures, and you set the strategic plan. When you're not here and you're in town and you're at the local grocery store or restaurant, you're not in session. And civilians just forget that. And they know that they voted for you. They're going to see you in the grocery store or the restaurant. They're going to come up and they go, man, I'm furious about the fire district about this issue. The worst thing you can do is say, I'll fix it, because we're not in session then. And civilians don't get that. And what I would coach you to do is say one of three things. You're going to hate this because you're just now 2 minutes on the job. But we have a great chief. Go see the chief. Another thing is come to our board meeting. We have an open board meeting. It's the second Tuesday of every month at 6 o'clock. Come to the board meeting. We want to hear your concern. Third thing you can say is, write us a letter. But whatever you do as an individual, don't take on that liability when a civilian throws that at you. Just very quickly, I'm going to move on back into ethics and morals. Ethics is a Greek word, ethos, and it means what society thinks is right or wrong. That's the bar of the society. Morals, mos, is a Latin word, and morals means what you feel is right or wrong. And I want to tell you here as a board member, the bar you always live up to is the ethics bar. That's the law in the state of Oregon. You may have personal feelings about something pro or con. I applaud everybody for having high morals and high standards, but here at this table, ethics is our minimum bar that we want to live up to. And really, again, it's all about personal gain. If you turn to the next page, top page 4, just a couple of types of ethics issues: nepotism, gifts, conflicts of interest. As board members, there may be times when you have a conflict of interest, and this is critical. And I shouldn't say that because it makes it sound like anything else I'm telling you the time isn't critical. But occasionally, if you have a conflict of interest, it is important to declare. Hypothetically, you provide a service for the district, or a spouse or child provides a service for the district. Might be maintenance, it might be groundskeeping, whatever that is. When that occurs, declare a conflict of interest and do not vote on your check, ever. You can't say in January, I do this, I do the grounds work, and every check in the future, is a conflict. You can't say that. Every meeting you have to declare a conflict on that check. And she is your best friend because she puts it in the minutes and declares it. And that's where it needs to go. So there is a thing called a potential conflict of interest. Hypothetically, if you're a contractor, the district's going to build a new building, and that contractor has high value to you and the knowledge on what they bring to the table. But they may bid on the job downstream. That contractor needs to declare a potential conflict of interest. And then when they bid on it, declare an actual conflict of interest. I'm going to move into why I'm here, and I'm going to be very quick because it's already almost 9 o'clock and you're all hungry and want to go home. There are 6 key board member duties and responsibilities. Number 1 is organizational direction. You are charged as an elected official to put together a mission, vision, value, and a strategic plan, a strategic direction of where you're taking this district. Your key job in providing organizational direction is to look into the future and figure out, we're going to need 2 new stations. We're going to need 9 new firefighters. We're going to need these different things. But your job is to understand who we are, why we meet, our purpose, our mission, our vision, our values, and then where we're going. That's your key job as a board member. Provide necessary resources, and really what that is about leadership. Number 1 is you got to provide a capable leader, and you have that in your interim chief, and to make sure that you're well trained to do the business of the district moving forward. Provide oversight. So of the 3, there is provide direction, provide resources, means spend your money right, provide good leadership, and then provide oversight. And the oversight really involves exactly what you're doing right now, having your attorney here to coach and mentor you with legal issues. Make sure that we've got a good, capable fire chief, and make sure that we're all well trained to provide that oversight. It is very important that we always close ranks to the public with our morale. It is a great thing here to debate issues, to discuss big issues. It's a great thing to have split votes. A 5-0-5-0 may not be as good as occasionally having a 3-2 or a 4-1 type vote. But when we're done with an issue and we voted on it in public, we close ranks and we always support the fire district, which I think is the most important service that you're going to provide the community, fire and life safety. I do want to point out that you're going to hear a lot more about risk management downstream. FEMA, I believe, within the next year or 2 is going to require you to have a formalized risk management process in place to get FEMA grants. We're very close to that. Several years ago, they did with NIMS. You had to be NIMS compliant to get grants. We're headed that direction. mostly because of all the large losses that occurred nationwide, the wildland fires, the hurricanes. FEMA's hitting, between 15 and 20 billion dollar events a year. And if you talk to FEMA, anything under $1 billion, they don't really count, which wouldn't that be nice? But anything over $1 billion, they count it as a big event. Several years ago, when the hurricanes went through, Harvey, Irma, and Maria, in 2019, I think it was, those 3 hurricanes were $300 billion in losses. So FEMA is definitely moving towards risk management, making sure that you're doing everything you can. We will help you install a program. Already, Standards and Poor's is looking at, as they rate you, you have a risk management program in place, and we can help you build that out. There are 3 fiduciary duties that you have: the duty of care, loyalty, and obedience. The duty of care essentially says that you're going to be here. You're going to act as a reasonable, prudent elected official. Pretty simple. Show up and we would suggest that it's show up, be present, be engaged, be professional, and your conduct. If you got a civilian that's giving you a hard time, choose your words carefully, you know, but always act professionally, always with the utmost high conduct. Your stewards, as in the duty of care says that your stewards of the district's money and assets that always act appropriately. The duty of loyalty. Essentially what that says is that we have to always be loyal to this organization, its mission, vision, values, its strategic plan, and where you're trying to head this organization, the direction you're trying to head this organization. If you sit on multiple boards, and in this state it's very common to do that, I have one individual who sits on the fire board and sits on a school board. And I've spoken with an individual on several occasions. This particular school district was given some land that was just up a hill from the main school body. Also sits on the fire board. The school was thrilled to get the land. They wanted to turn it into a big gymnasium and a big track and field. Great thing for the school district. The problem is it's up enough elevation that they can't put water up there. So there's no fire protection. So when this individual sits on the school board, they want this land, they want to build this gym, but when it sits on the fire board, it's absolutely juxtaposed to what the mission, vision, values of the fire board. And what I coach them is when you're at this table, it's all about fireman safety. And you have to be loyal to this organization's mission, vision, and values. Obedience, and I love this word. If you've got kids, it's a word that always kind of defies reality. I have a young 19-year-old son, and I'm joking when I say that he's a great kid. But essentially what obedience says is you've got to be obedient to your mission, vision, values. You've got to be obedient to why you exist and what you believe. I'm gonna shift gears because it's 9 o'clock and I'm gonna hit on a couple of things. I hinted at earlier is that you live in a perfect storm. As elected officials, you may have labor on one side, you may have civilians on another side, you may have other board members pulling you in a direction. And just realize that you always want to be true to what you feel is defendable. You always want to be true to yourself and acting above reproach in the district's best interest. So you're going to be pulled from time to time in different directions, and you need to be clear-headed when you're here and respond accordingly. The hardest thing for me with elected officials today is when you leave this table and interface with the civilians, they don't get that your power is now gone. You're not in session. So you're going to be standing on the sidelines of your kid's soccer game. And somebody's going to come up to you and start screaming about how come the fire engine costs $950,000 today? And what I want to coach you is that's the wrong, you always listen, but that's the wrong time to exert power over that individual. Tell them, go to the chief, come down here, come down to our board meeting, discuss it with us. but don't let somebody lasso you outside of your liability protection where you're acting on your own. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time going into what the civilians look at. I'll put a couple of things in there, how civilians look at their board members as far as being trustworthy and so forth. But what I do want to end with tonight, and I want to thank you again for letting me come up, is what I call the do rights. Do the right thing, right time, right way, right attitude for the right reasons, and that's almost always going to keep you out of trouble. I went through this really fast. It doesn't mean you're not going to get your full 2%, but I really back. Maybe if you like the idea, we'll come back next spring, which will help you with best practices next year.
We negotiate 3.
Pardon me?
We negotiate 3.
You cannot. And you can have me back twice, but you're not getting 4. You only get 2 a year.
Gotta try.
You gotta ask. We'll come back and maybe do, hit the law part or something else. Before I send you home, what questions, concerns, thoughts can I address for you?
So. Check your memory here. I know you've done this many times. You talk about understanding the power of the near miss. So the 1 series, the 59 mile, the 600 near misses, and then down at the bottom of that kind of picture is the culture. How do you go about changing that to avoid upstream?
That just happens to be one of our lectures, and we'll have to come back and do that, but I'm gonna give you some of the shorts.
Sure.
Culture takes a long time to build and it can be destroyed fairly quickly, but it's the most important ingredient in your organization. Closing the ranks and having a culture where we all understand why we're here. In the first place, we really want to start is mission, vision, values. If we have a well-defined mission, and I don't like long mission statements that are 60 words long, it should be very short. Public service, we're here for emergency services, fire and EMS. If we have well-written mission, vision, and values, the chief should be able to talk, somebody should be able to go to the chief's office and be on an issue, and the chief should be able to look at the mission, vision, values and say, is that why we exist? That's the starting place. And then what I would follow it up with is building a strong strategic plan where everybody, every stakeholder has a voice in it. And obviously some of our goals would be public service. Some of our goals would be labor related, making sure they're educated, taken care of, have good benefits. And then normally what we do is have a goal on money, making sure that we're sound moving forward with our finances. But the place to start is mission, vision, values, and strategic planning. It takes time. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but I want to tell you that what we need to build here is a thing called just culture. So I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm here and I'm going to jump in. Everybody errs. We all make mistakes. The culture that destroys culture, the things that destroy culture are when we fix blame and not fix problems. So when I meet with your safety committee, what I tell them is this. If it's an error, somebody made a mistake, we're gonna do an algorithm where we look first, is there a policy? So something happens wrong, somebody gets hurt. Is there a policy about this? Is it current, accurate, and applicable? If there's not, then we need a policy or not. I don't like a lot of policies, but the first thing we want to say is there a policy? Second is there training on that? So I've run into districts where we have civil rights policy. Now, you can't say certain things to certain people, right? They wrote it 10 years ago. It's been on the shelf for 10 years and they've never trained on it. Or they trained on it 10 years ago and they haven't trained currently. So policy, training, the environment, we set the environment so they can win. And then the fourth box is the human box, human decision-making box. If we have an individual that knows the policy, was trained on it, has all the right tools to do the job right, and then makes a decision, I'm not gonna wear my seatbelt. That's a whole lot different than a firefighter who's getting into the ring, trying to save a few seconds, and they're still turning out when they leave. So what I try to bifurcate is errors from willful wanton misconduct. And how I feel about safety, about culture is somebody who's intentionally breaking the rules really is a problem. We have to address that. If they make a mistake, let's learn from it. Because if they made the mistake, a lot of people could make the mistake. You ask the question, I'm gonna tell you a story if I can. I get to work for fire districts across the country. A major metro department, called me up, the chief called me up. And he said, let me tell you a story. You tell me how we deal with it. I push this just culture, blah, blah. I'm talking to the chief on the phone and what he tells me is that they have 26 stations, substations. This is a big city, right? And they're running 24/48s. So we've got one heck of a lot of officers. 100 and some, 120, 134. They're towed out on a down civilian. First in arriving crew from the radio chatter believes it's a heart attack. They pull in, they grab their gear, they grab the defib unit, and they grab the box, the drug box. They get inside, they evaluate the patient, senior down, and what they decide to do is they're gonna defib the patient. They do, and they get a full conversion. This is what every firefighter lives for. They save this patient's life. Package the patient, gets the patient to the hospital, the patient lives. They went in with the black box with the drugs, and in this state, and I think it's the same as state of Oregon, all the drugs in that box have to be inventoried every day. Right? 2 days later, the senior spouse comes in, plate of cookies, and the black box under her arm. Okay, this is what, for me in risk management, is a pucker factor 4. This is not a good thing. So can I say that? Are we being recorded?
Yeah.
So that's.
There's DEA involved with those drugs.
So this department is so big and so busy that the chief has the most wonderful assistant out front of the chief's office, whose job it is to make you feel loved, but to take you down the road to somebody else. So let me take you down to training. Let me take you down to pub ed, wherever. Walks up to this seat, this incredible assistant, and she sees the box and knows immediately what it is. Lady says, can I see your chief? She says, absolutely. And you get in to see the chief for 1 or 2 reasons. You're the mayor or you have an appointment. That's the only way to get in to see this chief. She runs in, busts into the chief's office. I know this chief very well. He's my lifelong friend. He's on the phone. He does one of these. Like, what are you doing? I'm on the phone. She says, hang up. You want this one. He hangs up. In walks the senior into his office. She says, hey, your firefighters saved my spouse. I don't have a lot, but I like to know the level. And you see me treatments get those firefighters. Starts it out. Oh, by the way, they left this behind. I thought you were. He tells me he never took his eyes off the box. He read the numbers on it. He knew the substation. He knew the ambulance it went into. She walks out the door. He's on the phone. And he calls the substation. And he says, he gets the officer in charge spot. Did you do the morning checkout? And he said, I could hear him thinking. It was like, what's the bug under the chief's saddle today? I mean, what's wrong? You know, yeah, of course I did my job. And he's thinking, you do your job, chief. Didn't say that. Chief says, would you do me a favor? Go check ambulance, whatever number it was. I want to know the black box is there and secure. Goes out. He said he could hear his feet on the pavement in the office walking. I was like, man, what's wrong with the chief? Runs back in. He hears the patter on the pavement, this time on the concrete, this time running. He grabs the phone breath. He says, somebody stole the black box. Let me tell you what happened. And this is why culture is so important. And this is why we use just culture. They're busy. They're never in the box. They're always on calls. So shift A is coming back from a call. Shift B is standing there and they swap leading. Shift B jumps in and they're gone, right? You do that every day. Every day you do that. How are they going to check the black box? Well, logically, what they would do is they would take the run list off the wall. No drugs were used. Black box has got to be there to be locked, right? That's logical. Let me ask you what you do as the chief. Chief drills down. Every substation, every shift is doing the same thing. Are you gonna call in 120, 130 officers and say, you're all in trouble? Like that's gonna work? Are you gonna hold the one person that got caught responsible? That's not fair. You know, everybody else would go underground because they don't trust the system. What we do is go, hey, we got a system problem. We need to change what we're doing. Nobody's in trouble. And that's what we need to do. I will tell you, I'm gonna take 2 more minutes. I'm gonna tell you one more story if I can. And hopefully these stories are resonating with you. I had a lot of coffee today, so I'm gonna burn off a cup of coffee.
We're good. I ate dinner before I came here, so I'm good.
Oh, good. Well, I'm getting Chick-fil-A on the way home, just so you know.
Okay.
You're driving a car, like, there's none around here.
Yeah, I'm going through Salem. So, I won't mention Swan Valley Fire by name. I said that to be humorous. Paul Lestage and I have a separate business. Paul was, assistant chief at the time, and he gave me this story to tell, and he loves us telling the story because it really resonates with just culture. They're toned out, medical emergency, 3 rigs respond. There is a quantum, big pierced rig, right? You know, there's an ambulance, a big box international, and a chief's rig, a suburban. So the acting officer in charge is at an intersection, and going in front of him is the quantum, and behind it is the rescue rig. They're gonna go down the road a little ways and then turn on another road to go up to the rescue. Here's what happens. The quantum sees the intersection coming up, but they're going a little bit fast, okay? You know the story, slams on his brakes because no firefighter's gonna pass the intersection, turn around and come back, right? Throws out the anchor and slams on his brakes. The big box ambulance now has a pucker factor 3, eyes dilated because the closure rate's coming up real fast. The big box ambulance slams on their brakes. They break it loose from the pavement, turn it around backwards and slide by the quantum, right? They kind of wave at each other. The big box ambulance goes in the ditch just past the intersection. So this is, I don't know why we call this a near miss in our profession. This is a near hit for me, but in our profession, we call it a near miss. So, Paul calls everybody in and says, something wrong, could have had a bad accident. We're gonna drill down and find out what it was. They had a policy that said you have to follow at a certain distance when you're going through so many feet for safety. The hero of this is the officer in charge that day. Said they were the right distance, something else is wrong. So Paul has one of their officers do a lengthy study of what transpired. You know what they find out? The quantum, even though as big as it was, and you'll know this better than I will, actually stopped twice as fast as the big box international. It was a disaster waiting to happen. And if I heard the story correctly, that it was set up so that when they took their foot off the gas, the jig would engage before the lights even came on. This was gonna be an accident. But instead, they realized the policy was wrong and they rewrote it and nobody got in trouble. So Paul, the rest of the story is great. Paul calls everybody back in. The drivers are all the rigs, everybody who's involved. And they're nervous that somebody's gonna get in trouble for following too close, right? So Paul says, I got good news and bad news. And the driver of the rig says, well, what's the good news? Well, the good news is our policy was wrong. And so nobody's in trouble for following too close. Everybody breathes a sigh of relief. And then the says, well, what's the bad news? Paul says, well, we got a vacuum policy and it requires you to have a spotter. And clearly when you were sliding down the road back page, you didn't spot it, right? My point is,
We're getting you for that.
yeah, my point is that we write policies, we do training, but it's all flawed. We're all flawed. And as humans, let's learn from those. If we have a rogue who is intentionally breaking the rules, they need to be in trouble. But everybody else, let's learn from it and get better at what we do. So I lectured about culture and I apologize, but it's the core fiber of what makes us great.
No, thank you.
Thank you for staying awake. We'll come back up this spring and maybe address culture if you like it.
Yes, thanks, Jeff.
My pleasure. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna get 2 Chick-fil-A's on the way home.
Yeah, like 50 minutes.
Do they close?
Yeah, and
Idiot.
you're not gonna make,
Yeah,
you make sense in that,
I'm speeding.
you're not falling for false.
Okay, it may be a fake back. He's working too hard. He's doing a lot of work with Harvard men right now.
Okay, so, well, he hit the new chicken place on the way out of town. What time's that close?
Oh, it's about Popeyes.
Absolutely. My,
Popeyes is not chicken.
my daughter has no dog and I need diet, so it's probably better.
If it's open, all right, it's open.
Okay, no, thanks, Jeff, for that. That was good.
Thank you.
I'm still, Sanchez, I'm still looking at you for, getting the 3% next time.
Try.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna close this out with board member comments. Rick, I'm starting with you.
Good meeting.
Austin.
Thank you for your work. I appreciate you coming in. Appreciate you working for us. That's helping us out. That's good. So,
Thank you.
Good? Okay, all right, mine will be a couple things. Yeah, it was a good meeting, Rick, I echo that. Jeff, I do appreciate you coming in, and helping us out. I know that you'll help out, Chief Smythe as he leads us down the road. And that's gonna be needed. And then one thing I do want to say publicly is, so at our last board meeting that we had, we listened to the two chief candidates. And one of them told a story about, but he closed the shop and did some other stuff like that as one of his things to save in their budget, stuff like that. That digressed into a discussion amongst ourselves as the board here at that meeting. Which I want to publicly apologize to Jeremy Leonard and Ray Malone. That shouldn't happen. We don't discuss things like that in a public session, because that could lead to layoffs and stuff. I did reach out to them today and talk to both of them, but I just want to publicly apologize for that, because that's not it's a gut punch to somebody to hear that in a public forum when it was never a discussion or anything like that. So just so they know, we're 100% behind the shop and both those folks, and that was not intentional. That just kind of spun away from us. And as the board chair, I'll take full responsibility for that discussion happening. But we support them 100%. And then Chief Smythe,
And now we know that they're certified, right? And they've been certified for a long time.
they are good. And then Chief Smythe, thank you for taking on that role, and you have my 100% support to help us through this. Thank you. You're welcome. That being said, I got, let's see, 21:15 and we're done.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. You as well.
David.